came from the right, came from the left.
They started throwing tear gas and hitting folk with their billy clubs. Matter of fact, I got hit with one of the billy clubs on my left shoulder blade.
Hosea said, you don't move. Get back, get back.
People began to come back across the bridge, staggering from the tear gas.
I saw kids running. I saw officers behind them beating them, and they're trying to get away. And I saw blood all on the pavement.
A little girl about 14 years old was turning to run, and she slipped down a hill. Don't know to this day who she was.
I was shocked to see people treating human beings like that. I didn't move. I didn't even walk away.
She was just crying and hollering, turned over and said, "Are you all right?"
What happened to him didn't seem feasible. I had heard him tell the story that he catapulted himself over the police line. He disappears.
Pulled her up and threw her up on my shoulder, and then I went over here and started digging up. I really had to dig my fingers in and dig my toes in.
In the midst of this pandemonium, Spider Martin focused his mind and the lens of his pawn shop camera, clicking the shutter again and again.
I was hit in the head by a state trooper with a nightstick, and I thought it was the last protest. I felt my legs going out from under me, and I thought I saw death. I thought I was going to die.
All that I've learned, all that you lost, all that you've given, and all it costs.
You got knocked down.
Oh, yes. One fellow, and this is a state trooper, he came up to me and said, "Run." And I just gave him a dirty look, "What for what?" And he said, I said, "Run." And he hit me on my shoulder. But the second lick was at the base of my neck, and I went unconscious to the ground.
Mrs. Boynton had been hit and seriously hurt.
You're like the wings of a butterfly. Start a hurricane.
Kill him out. Take him away. I didn't want to leave that young girl down there.
They created a riot.
They created a riot. They created a confrontation.
And you and Jose and Ms. Boynton were knocked down in the dirt, and she was left laying there as though she were dead.
I saw Mrs. Boynton almost just rolling. She had on a long overcoat. She was knocked down. I was knocked down. Jose was knocked down.
Hosea Williams miraculously was uninjured.
One of those photographs shot by Spider Martin shows him. He is looking backwards at the backs of the state troopers on the opposite side. So indeed, he did manage to catapult himself over the attack.
I knew Jose and those were going to go back across the bridge because they had no other choice, the way they were rushing them with the horses and the billy clubs and the tear gas.
I was coming back with Hosea, and there were horsemen swinging clubs, and we were ducking. He was pushing my head down. We turned the corner on Water Street, and they chased us all the way back to Brown Chapel and into Brown Chapel.
When Willie Bolden finally made it to the top of that hill, tear gas was still in the air, but the Edmund Pettus Bridge was nearly deserted.
Jim Clark knew who Jose Williams and John Lewis were, and Miss Boynton. They kind of went after them special.
Like they go
Hosea
after
Williams
me,
was missing. John Lewis, condition unknown. Amelia Boynton left for dead by Sheriff Jim Clark. Brown Chapel was under siege. When I picked up the phone to call Dr. King in Atlanta, it seemed to be our darkest hour.
Andrew Young Presents, proudly brought to you by the Coca-Cola Company.
Open Happiness. Delta Airlines, the official airline of Andrew Young Presents. McDonald's, I'm Lovin' It. Abbott, A Promise for Life. And Chevron, we may have more in common than you think. Learn more at chevron.com.
There's plenty of dark roads a man has gotta walk.
To order your copy of Leaving Selma on DVD today, log on to the internet and visit our website at andrewyoung.tv. Learn more about the true story that changed America.
The full potential of his dream.
These bottles may look empty, but actually, they're full. They're full of family history and treasured memories. Around the radio and in front of the TV. At Saturday reunions and Sunday dinners. In the backyard and on the front porch. Imagine how many memories one bottle can hold.
People are hooked on Coca-Cola with their cocaine in it, nasty fuckers.
Up. A short word that's a tall order. Up your game. Up the ante. And if you stumble, you get back up. Up isn't easy, and we ought to know. We're in the business of up. Every day, Delta flies 250,000 people while investing billions improving everything from booking to baggage claim. We're raising the bar on flying, and tomorrow we will up it yet again.
There are videos I want you all to look at. One of them is called Rosewood. The other one is called Leaving Selma. The other one is called Selma. You all need to know how dirty them Jews and Caucasians and whatever the hell you want to call them things. See how your parents and grandparents acted, how they got what they got today.
And captured some of the most dramatic moments on film was a man named Spider.
A little memorial where I put some of my dad's ashes.
Hey you, it's me. Can you hear me calling? Can you see me falling?
He went to the pawn shop, got a camera, and then he got a job at Birmingham News. Totally self-taught, on the spot practically, just out of necessity to make some money.
I got no one else. Tell me you know what I need.
The daughter of Spider Martin is a folk artist, and a good one. High atop this Alabama mountain, homages to his memory are all around.
Daddy would just throw up a sheet. I knew he was doing that for a newspaper because after he made the photographs, he would show me a newspaper.
Can you hear me?
I was just about to turn 5 when he went to Selma.
And so, not knowing he would risk his life that day, the young photojournalist embarked on what he thought would be just another routine assignment.
Spider was just a wonderful guy. Small, short. He can move. He can get around.
On March the 7th, 1965, John Lewis and Hosea Williams, along with Amelia Boynton, led marches to the foot of the Edmund Pettus Bridge, and Spider Martin took this iconic photo. The next ones shocked virtually everyone who saw them.
The photographs by Spider Martin have changed not just the American South, but changed our nation and our world.
He proclaimed himself the world's greatest photographer.
Right on.
And it was certainly true that particular Sunday. Tracy Martin has incorporated some of them into her own work.
I love bringing it back into my work now.
Like this piece, symbolic of the days when even water fountains were segregated. I was surprised to find a picture of myself in it. Of the images he captured in Selma on this day and in those that followed, Spider Martin printed only 50 or so.
For exhibitions that were seen by the public.
But there are more.
He was known for shooting a lot. People have no idea
flying them flags still today.
What he got on film.
Film that outlived the world's greatest photographer.
That people have never before seen. And I'm just seeing things for the first time myself.
After Spider Martin died in 2003, years passed before Tracy was ready to start going through the negatives she inherited from her father.
I look at all the negatives and I see all these images that just blow me away.
They number in the thousands. And you'll see some of them in this documentary.
He knew that he had some power there to be able to help expose what was going on. It's what got captured on film that was the truth.
In Judge Judy's court, one dumb question brings an answer that smarts.
Boy, them Europeans, some evil ones. My God. And they still living today, their ancestors. Lord, in the name of Jesus, I'm asking you to take them off the face of the earth. Wipe them out. All those evil people that did all that damage and hurt so many innocent people. Take their families off the face of the earth, Father. Remove them. They have been a stumbling block all these years. And carrying on all that evil that's going on right today. And them niggas is still flying them flags. Now they done put a gun up in it. They some evil suckers. People gonna come, you ain't gonna do them foreigners like that because they gonna take you out first. You won't talk that shit to them. Look at that baby having a good time. Will she grow up, will they grow up and love all people, or they hate people of color? It depends on what they are taught. Nobody's supposed to have a good time and enjoy life but them, but they are lying. Ain't nobody supposed to have fun but them, enjoy life but them. And most of them work at stealing from poor people so they can enjoy things like this. No good mothers.
When Southern lawmen and the Ku Klux Klan savagely attacked innocent men, women, and children on what is come to be called Bloody Sunday, their hatred and violence wasn't confined to the Edmund Pettus Bridge.
Oh my God.
It spilled like raw sewage into living rooms across America.
By that Sunday evening, that scene was in everyone's home.
Most of America was watching Judgment at Nuremberg, an acclaimed motion picture about Nazi war atrocities. ABC interrupted the movie to show what had happened in Selma. Many viewers were confused and thought they were actually still watching the Nazis.
It made me very sad. So much of the anger and the resentment and the misunderstanding
Go ahead, Grandma.
was just not necessary.
That's right, Grandma. Tell
If we
me.
had just done what was right.
That's right.
They're
If
not
you
human
had just
beings.
done what was
Those
right.
people, he sent a hearse over there. And I didn't know that until years afterward.
Amelia Boynton came to in a hospital.
When I woke up, I was determined.
So was John Lewis. Did you suffer serious?
I had a concussion. I don't recall how I made it back through the streets of Selma, but I do recall being back at the church. I stood up and said, I don't understand it. How President Johnson can send troops to Vietnam and cannot send troops to Selma, Alabama to protect people
Come
who
on
only
now.
desires to register to vote.
Come
The
on
next thing
now.
I knew, I was put in an ambulance.
Brown Chapel was under siege.
Canistered the church, with tear gas. I remember staying by the door, saying to myself, you know, I'm going to stop them. I'm going to do it as best I can, nonviolently, if I can. Opened the door, I said, look, get those horses off the steps of the truck. And they backed their horse down. Eventually, caused them to withdraw.
Hosea Williams loved to keep close friends like J.T. Johnson guessing.
We looked and looked all over Selma. Jose couldn't be found, so we really thought they'd kill him.
We didn't know what condition he was in. We knew that he was in the attack. We saw it on television.
And finally, he showed up 2 or 3 hours later. He never did tell where
he went to Safe House in the community where he stayed on the porch under a blanket until nightfall.
By then, Martin Luther King and Ralph David Abernathy had arrived.
Dr. King and Reverend Abernathy came by to visit me. And Dr. King said, don't worry, John, we'll make it from Selma to Montgomery, and the voting rights act will be passed.
Most Americans could hardly believe what they were seeing. Bernard Lafayette knew all too well it was true.
One called me and said, did you hear what happened in Selma? Turn on television. I immediately went down. I started recruiting, more people to come.
In Detroit, Michigan, a working-class housewife and mother named Viola Liuzzo stared at her television set in disbelief, outraged by the unprovoked brutality. She called her husband and said, this is everybody's fight. Then she told him she was going to Selma. All over the United States, there were what Martin Luther King Jr. called people of goodwill, and their numbers were too great to be counted. But in the year 1965, folks in Alabama didn't know that.
Their action on the Edmund Pettus Bridge brought people from all over the world.
People came in.
Thousands upon thousands would rain down upon this place in the days to come.
We had already made the decision that we was going to have the march. We didn't know exactly what day it was going to happen or when it was going to happen.
We just began to prepare.
Conceiving of a march from Selma to Montgomery was easy.
Didn't need much thinking, right? We're just going to do it, right?
Moving a large number of people 50 miles would prove very complex.
Just a lot of thinking had to be done.
C.T. Vivian, Hosea Williams, and others managed those logistics marvelously.
It's a matter of just doing what you had to do. We had meetings. We would sit and talk about what we needed.
The advance team included J.T. Johnson and Al Lingo.
You got to have your toilets. You got to have the water.
We had to organize food.
We were in the rental business, the tables, chairs, china, and of course tents.
Martin Luther King Jr. needed tents.
There's plenty of dark roads a man has gotta walk.
To order your copy of Leaving Selma on DVD today, log on to the internet and visit our website at andrewyoung.tv. Learn more about the true story that changed America.
The full potential of his dream.
Richmond Vapes has all your vaping supplies, like this complete vaping kit with American-made e-liquid for only $22.95. Plus, Richmond Vapes.
Another poisonous way to kill the people. Richmond Vapes killing people. Got them locked in on that stuff worse than the cigarettes, just so the white man can make money. Killing people. That's a shameful God. Yeah, it's all right now. We got to go back that way again. That's crazy, because a lot of them are walking dead. They just ain't fell over yet. Some of the racist pigs. Come on now. Keep your penis in your pants.
The dedication of a new park honoring one of my dearest friends. There it is. We're here to give thanks, particularly for Charlie Loudermilk. Vision and courage and entrepreneurial spirit, generous to a fault. God has blessed us through you. In 1962, Charlie purchased 300 folding chairs and began renting them out for parties at 10 cents apiece. Today, the company he founded, Aaron Rents, now known simply as Aaron's, grosses billions a year.
55 years, so I mean, it didn't happen overnight. It's a lot of sweat.
He is one of my city's most successful businessmen and prominent philanthropists. Yet very few people know Charlie Loudermilk also happens to be an unsung and perhaps unlikely hero of the civil rights movement. We never talked much about your role in helping us get from Selma to Montgomery.
People, primarily in the South, wasn't too enthused about having a march.
That included one of his top salesmen at Aaron's.
He didn't really care for African Americans. And he came to me and said, you know, Mr. Loudermilk, I've been contacted from this march.
Charlie Loudermilk knew the potential consequence.
We've got customers that all would appreciate us taking a part in this march. I said, it's the right thing to do, and let's see if we can't do it. But you got to rent a truck, and you got to take our name off of everything. You cannot let anyone know where these tents came from.
He gave Dr. King the employee discount, 20%, and has never forgotten how deeply affected he was when the payment arrived.
With quarters and nickels and dimes and dollar bills, and obviously the money had come from the rank and file.
That rank and file was growing day by day.
We were manning phones. People were willing to send money. They just wanted to know where to send it.
Something new and different was happening, an event unlike any other.
The country descended on Selma the next 2 or 3 days. We had people volunteering from all over the country. We want to send a busload of people from Chicago.
Coming from all over the world in here. Why don't you stay at home and clean up your own hometown?
Among those who didn't stay at home was Viola Liuzzo. Leaving her 5 children in Detroit with their father, a teamster, she drove to Selma and asked to be put to work.
She would do anything you asked her to do. And she just wanted to be a part of this freedom movement.
A movement growing by the hour.
Our arrival was but one of many.
Reporter George Rice of WCCO in Minneapolis followed 4 ministers from Minnesota to Selma.
Into the tense town of 30,000 were pouring hundreds of visitors, including a large proportion of white clergymen responding to an appeal by Martin Luther King.
And priests, churchmen came in from all over the world.
25 Episcopal ministers helped him put these tents up.
We had priests and rabbis. We had blacks and whites, browns and yellows, rich and poor. Everybody came in to Selma because of what they saw on national television.
Once settled, the clergymen joined their hostess, Mrs. Lily Bell Ragland, in her living room.
The thing that impresses me most is the beautiful warmth of the Negro community and the way they've accepted us. We, of course, are living in a Negro home, and I'm sure that this is one of the factors that makes the local citizens somewhat irritated.
Irritated was a terrible understatement. James Reeve, a 38-year-old minister and father of 4 from Boston, was attacked by a white mob armed with clubs, beaten to death, coming out of a restaurant just a few blocks from here, simply because he was a white Unitarian pastor who came down to share our struggle and to try to change America without violence. More violence broke out as J.T. Johnson and others from SCOC prepared for the big march. A group of students decided to stage a smaller one in Montgomery.
The possemen paused only long enough to form a line and then charged toward the crowd.
The policemen in Montgomery beat them bad.
The possemen swung billy clubs, canes, and heavy lariats. They appeared well trained for their work.
I was there for that march. They found out that they had made an awful mistake.
These marches have been a nuisance to us, and we're getting tired of them, but there's nothing, in my estimation, that justifies the violence that I saw here today. It was uncalled for, a very appalling thing.
Even white people in Alabama were starting to speak out.
The drama and the confrontations that were happening, and people saw that instantly, and people were moved by that emotionally.
The march got off to a second false start, with Dr. King in lead of hundreds across the Edmund Pettus Bridge, only to be stopped again. Nonviolent protest was one thing, an outright bloodbath was something else. He decided to turn back and wait for the federal courts and the White House. President Johnson knew the situation was volatile, and he told aides not to trust Alabama Governor George Wallace.
You're dealing with a very treacherous guy, and you all just must not even come in court anymore because he's a no good son of a bitch.
The rapid pace of the change that was taking place had a lot to do with the media.
A point that was not lost on the locals.
The animosity toward the media was horrible.
Second-generation journalist Barbara Thomas recalls the tale of one reporter who went into a Selma drugstore to buy an aspirin for his headache.
Very ticked off white guy behind the counter said, "Won't do you any good." And the guy said, "Why?" He said, "You'll be dead before it can take effect."
It's a story she heard from her father, Rex Thomas, a legendary Associated Press reporter who covered the entire civil rights movement, and whose ingenuity was tested by the same challenges our ground crew faced.
There were no cell phones, there were no iPads, there were no laptops. You just had to find any way you could to get the story in. You had to get it first, and you had to make sure your competitor did not get it.
The most important thing was finding places to camp.
We chose the length of each day's journey according to the availability of campsites.
I ran the route sometime from Montgomery back to Selma and back to Montgomery.
Lowndes County west of Montgomery is very sparsely populated, with hardly a town over 5,000 people.
That's a very desolate area, and it's pretty much to this day. There's not a lot on that road.
But Rex Thomas was planning ahead, the same as we were.
We had to scout out these places, get permission.
You had to find people who own land, who would receive you and accept you. And it's a lot of African Americans down through their own land. So that helped us out a whole lot.
Rex didn't follow in their footsteps. He found the way on his own.
In order to make sure that he could phone in any developments, he went ahead and leased for $25 a day exclusive use of every telephone at every house on that route. And if there was a party line, he had to go find those people and rent them too. So that if UPI came along and wanted to use their phone, nope, couldn't do it.
Finally, Judge Frank Johnson of Montgomery issued his ruling. The march could take place, but under strict guidelines. We were ready, or as close to being ready as we would ever be.
All over the world, people are watching Selma. They are watching not only those who are participating in the great drama of freedom there. They are watching to see what we in our comfortable homes intend to do to wipe away that which is sordid in American life. For some of us, this will be the first time in years we have come face to face with ourselves, with our prejudices, with our hopes and aspirations, with our fears.
Military on it.
You could feel the excitement in the air.
With Martin Luther King Jr. and his wife Coretta leading the way.
The long-anticipated Freedom March from Selma to Alabama's capital of Montgomery finally gets underway.
He wanted to be seen on the front line with Jesus.
He got the next best thing.
That's right.
Archbishop Yakovus, head of the Greek Orthodox Church in North and South America, and Rabbi Abraham Heschel, the country's leading Jewish philosopher, an Old Testament scholar, was an endorsement that suddenly transformed the march from a political event into a spiritual event.
The strategy made it work. And the strategy was based upon spirituality.
Now they march under a federal court order and with the protection of federalized National Guard units and regular troops.
People often ask why we wore lace. That morning, a delegation had arrived from Hawaii, where incidentally, a young boy named Barack Obama had been born 3.5 years earlier. Also in the crowd was an acclaimed filmmaker and professor at Columbia University, Stefan Sharaff.
He gathered a bunch of his students, and last minute notice, they all traveled down to Selma to participate in the march and also to capture the march as a film.
Billy Sharaff, also a filmmaker, is the son of Stefan Sharaff.
The march and what Martin Luther King was representing, that really hit a nerve, I think, for a lot of people, and I think my dad specifically, because of his past. Most of his family was killed in the Nazi concentration camps. He assigned each student a specific shot that they were to capture. So one student was walking with the marchers and filming them from behind, and there was a student who was below getting a shot of all the marchers passing. All these separate elements come together to really create this three-dimensional, very dynamic piece that has a lot of the emotion and the power the people in the march felt at that very important, specific moment.
It was exhilarating. My wife, Jean, had arrived with our 3 young daughters, who marched with the King children further back in line. I couldn't spend much time with my family. I was too busy running from the beginning of the march to the rear, a span of almost a mile of bodies, taking care of this and that detail. If people toward the back were lagging or hadn't caught the song starting up in front, I would walk and sing with them. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around, turn me around, turn me around. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. I'm gonna keep on.
Come on, march.
Keep on talking.
Come on.
Marching down the freedom lane.
Those songs, growing up, I always associated them with the Jewish experience because my dad held them so close.
Rabbi Heschel would say later, I felt my feet were praying. Hiking 7 miles, particularly in the dress clothes some of the marchers chose to wear, was no picnic.
What was most impressive to me about the first day of the Selma to Montgomery March was the number of people, the variety of people in terms of ethnicity.
Alabama National Guardsmen, federalized by the president, were stationed at intervals along the highway, though this did not deter hostile whites from heckling us. I really wasn't worried about the epithets. It was the possibility of physical violence that concerned me. You never know when somebody lurking in the bushes would take a pot shot at you. Spider Martin was there too.
He was fearless.
After what he'd witnessed on the Edmund Pettus Bridge, he wasn't about to miss this.
And he would leave the herd, I guess, and go do his thing. And he got threatened a lot. Over and over, he got beat up. He figured out that he could work with some of these people and allow them to believe that he was one of the good old boys, too. And he was, he was a country boy. And, he could pull that off. The result is some of the best pictures from the march from any photographer. And there's a lot of great photographers.
First night is spent in a field near New Sister Springs Baptist Church. Their host, a Negro farmer.
For many, the march was an opening ceremony. The crowd for the second, third, and fourth legs of the march had to be cut to 300 people, a limit set by Judge Frank Johnson's court order. Martin was scheduled for speaking engagements that he simply had to make, so he left also. The National Council of Churches provided food for the marchers, a heavy responsibility, which they satisfied admirably. After the long day's walk, there was tremendous energy and excitement.
Selma was a huge campout.
Curiosity got the best of Charlie Loudermilk.
We decided we were going to go over and see those tents. So the wives weren't too happy about us. They thought it was going to be very hostile. We were going to get shot and all this, that, and the other. But we decided we're going to do it anyway. So that Sunday morning, we went over there.
On the spur of the moment, Charlie and a close friend drove to Alabama. They found Route 80 easily enough and the back of the march, but didn't see any tents.
We'd stop and ask the state patrol. It seemed like they had one in every corner on the way over there. They were looking for a lot of violence too, and had helicopters. And we would ask them, where are the tents? We own these tents. And they would growl at us. They were state patrol people. They were not happy at all that this thing was happening. And they said, well, you got to go to the front of that march and ask them where these tents were.
At the front of the line, Charlie Loudermilk walked and chatted with Martin Luther King, but then looked up and saw a flatbed truck.
And the TV camera was on the back of the truck, looking at everybody in this thing.
Thus, Charlie Loudermilk and his friend inadvertently became freedom marchers. It was dangerous, and it was particularly dangerous to be white. You all were either brave or foolish.
And that's my life. That's my life. It's the right thing to do. And that's what I do with my company.
Celebrities were everywhere. So were future celebrities, like 18-year-old Susan Sarandon. The next to last leg of the march ended on the outskirts of Montgomery, at the city of St. Jude, a black Catholic school.
We got the place out of St. Jude and erected a stage, and Arabella Ford had put together Sammy Davis Jr., I think, Burt Lancaster. That was an interesting night for me. He and I spent a lot of time together.
It rained and rained that night until we were all slopping through a city of mud.
And it was a question of who's in charge here.
It was a real mess.
Not knowing where things were going to be delivered, but you knew there were people dedicated to delivering the goods somehow.
By then, our ranks had swelled again in anticipation of the final afternoon's climactic march on the state capitol.
There's plenty of dark roads a man has gotta walk.
To order your copy of Leaving Selma on DVD today, log on to the internet and visit our website at andrewyoung.tv. Learn more about the true story that changed America.
The full potential of his dream.
Somebody called Al Lingo over to a car and asked him to sit up front. In the back was Martin Luther King.
And he was funny as he could be. We were all laughing and so on. One of the great things Martin King said to me was, he just said, thank you, Al. I want to say thank you for putting in the effort.
In 5 unbelievable days, we had moved a strolling city across the lonely Alabama terrain without violence, without tragedy, without disaster.
The Come of the Selma movement was phenomenal.
On the morning of March 25th, stars again fell on Alabama. A nonviolent army of 50,000 invaded Montgomery and marched toward the state capitol. Inside, George Wallace watched helplessly.
A lot of African Americans were able to forgive him later in life. I don't know that I could have done it. Even though he said he was sorry and he apologized, a lot of lives had been ruined by that point. And the whole state's image had been ruined.
Well, Mama, what does this all mean? And how am I to sleep when some people pay the highest cost in a country that is free? And she said, pray, child, for the men and women who keep on keeping on, for the red, white, and blue. Oh, and every day you live and breathe and see that eagle fly. Don't forget what keeps the dream alive.
As the march dispersed, many of us retired to the Dexter Avenue Baptist Church, where Martin had started his ministry, and where, as a young pastor a decade earlier, he had been called upon to lead the Montgomery bus boycott, and in essence, lead the civil rights movement. I slipped away to the men's room, locked the door, thanked God, and began to weep. Now, I cry easily and without shame, but not then. It was my job to inspire confidence, and tears were a luxury I could not afford. So, finally, I washed my face and went back out to celebrate with friends and co-workers who knew only the Andy who never broke down.
Praise God for the men and women who keep on keeping on, for the red, white, and blue. Oh, and every day you live and breathe and see that eagle fly. Don't forget who keeps our dreams alive.
The relief was short-lived. Always eager to help, Viola Liuzzo insisted on driving marchers back to Selma.
In the basement at Dexter Avenue Baptist Church, just before she got in her car, we begged her not to go. And I said, you don't have to do that. I said, we got buses, we got everything out there. We're gonna take these people back to Selma. She said, I wanna drive something. And she did.
As Mrs. Liuzzo headed down Route 80, 4 Klansmen pulled alongside her 1963 Oldsmobile and fired directly into the car, hitting her twice in the head.
It killed her.
Don't forget who keeps our dreams alive.
Mrs. Liuzzi went to Alabama to serve the struggles for justice. She was murdered by the enemies of justice on a lonely road between Selma and Montgomery, Alabama. Arrests were made a few minutes ago.
Who keeps our dreams alive?
One of the Klansmen,
Gary Thomas Rowe,
was an FBI informant. But despite his eyewitness testimony, the verdict in Alabama was not guilty.
See you in Hollywood. Score!
The winner is Kelly Clarkson.
This is my heartbeat song and I'm gonna play it. Been so long I forgot how to turn it up, 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 up all night long.
Kelly Clarkson is the OG idol.
She has paved the way for all of us to be here.
She's incredible.
This is my heartbeat song and I'm
Wednesday at 8 on Fox Richmond.
Coca-Cola had everybody in America hooked on it except me with that cocaine in it. Had people hooked on the Coca-Colas back in the day. They'll do anything to make a dime or $1. A million commercials.
Judgment Day was at hand. Like Armageddon, their world had come to an end. 7 months after telling Martin Luther King Jr. there could be no Voting Rights Act in 1965, Lyndon Johnson signed the landmark bill, and it became the law of the land.
Their cause must be our cause too.
Come on.
Because it's not just Negroes, but really it's all of us.
Come on, Johnson.
Who must overcome the crippling legacy of bigotry
That's right.
and injustice.
That's right.
And we shall overcome.
That's right.
All it had taken to give President Johnson the political capital he needed was 3 deaths, a day of unforgettable violence, and an extraordinary convergence of humanity.
I knew it was going to happen. I didn't know when, but it had to happen.
In Selma, 9,000 blacks registered to vote and wasted no time in exercising this right. In the next election, Jim Clark was thrown out of office.
Good.
For a while, the former sheriff sold mobile homes and later on something else. For conspiring to smuggle tons of marijuana from Colombia, he was sent to prison.
Now that's a man that never regretted what he did.
Jim Clark ended up in a nursing home alone, but near the end of his life, a reporter with the Montgomery Advertiser came to see if he had changed.
No.
He said, I would do the same thing I did when I was there.
When Jim Clark died in 2007, at the age of 84, the New York Times gave him credit for inadvertently becoming a hero of the voting rights movement. You went to Jim Clark's funeral?
Yes. For me, it was sad to be so flamboyant and so popular to have to die like that.
Not many people showed up for the service, and though a few relatives were there, the section reserved for family was empty. And I know that God will show mercy to him, even though he showed no mercy to us.
My mother said, you don't have any place for love when you hate like that.
On August the 18th, 2011, Amelia Boynton celebrated her 100th birthday. Then she just kept going.
I felt that I always was free. I was always free.
Go ahead, baby girl.
Andrew Young Presents, proudly brought to you by the Coca-Cola Company, Open Happiness, Delta Airlines, the official airline of Andrew Young Presents, McDonald's. To order your copy of Leaving Selma on DVD today, log on to the internet and visit our website at andrewyoung.tv. Learn more about the true story that changed America.
The full potential of his dream.
We lived our little drama. So goes a line from the song, Stars Fell on Alabama, inspired by that historic and unforgettable meteor shower. Over 130 years later, stars fell on Alabama again. America's heart beat like a hammer.
Selma to Montgomery, I was 2.